Hi, welcome to the Retirement Railroad Matinee Modeling Tip of the Day. I'm Steve, and today I want to get into, I've covered it in some detail previously, so this isn't new, but I'm going to be putting a decoder into an Athearn Blue Box F7 powered chassis. That was probably a third generation. First being the rubber band drives of the late 50s and 60s. The second being the direct bone, dog bone drives without flywheels that had some of these style weights. And then third generation, they did away with these weights and they went to big flywheels. All right, to give some momentum, stopping and starting momentum. And later they went to what they called superpower, and that was a big saddle weight. So what we're going to do I got from eBay, I've been looking for 3-4 months for a powered chassis at a reasonable rate. Now, these things have I don't understand it, other than eBay ripoffs. But these things have been going for $50 plus, just the powered chassis. Okay, and that's ridiculous. You know, a Blue Box of this generation should be around $20, and that's what I got this one for, $20. And so, and $5 shipping, something like that. So it wasn't too bad. Then you're always running the risk, will it run or not? So I've already tested it, but let's put it on the test track and I'll show you. And my bench here has 3 tracks. One's for DC, one's for DCC programming, and the other one's for DCC testing. Okay, so let's switch over to that camera view. And we got it on there. I did clean the wheels, and they were relatively clean. You know, that's not too bad in the grand scope of things. So they have been cleaned, and so let's test it out and see what we have. Doesn't mean the track's clean. And the commutator probably needs to be cleaned some too. And the one thing about these older Athearn Blue Box, they've got dog bone drives to them. They are a little noisy. So I am going to put a decoder in it, and it's not an expensive one. It's a Digitrax SDH166D. You can read it right underneath that Digitrax there. I've installed a number of these in locomotives, and all my F units have this decoder in. This will be a relatively easy install, and I'll show you why. Let's switch over to my little portable workbench that I made as part of phase 2 here at the Retirement Railroad. So stay tuned. All right, so what are we going to do? Well, the first thing is this little piece here comes off, gets thrown in the garbage. Okay, don't need it. Although I will be cutting a little piece off of this. This does not have the old incandescent headlight bracket on it, and I don't need it for this installation. I'll show you why. I have 3 different F unit shells here. I have an Athearn Blue Box Santa Fe War Bonnet A unit and B unit, and I have a Athearn Blue Box Dummy Northern Pacific B unit as well. Now these B units don't need lights. So this one is going to be for one of these two B units. Okay? Eventually they'll all be powered. In the interim, I will probably put the A unit Santa Fe on that dummy chassis, and then have an ABB A train, and the 3 powered units should be more than enough for my length of train and grades here at the Retirement Railroad. So what else am I going to do to this? Well, I'm going to have to pull the motor, all right, and isolate the bottom bracket. There's one of these on the top and one of these on the bottom, and this one on the bottom makes contact with the frame, all right, which is one of the two polarities of the power pickup. All right, so I have to isolate that for a DCC installation, and I will run a separate negative off of the frame up to the decoder. The positives will come off the 2 trucks, okay, and will tie into the top here. What else do I have to do? Well, I'm going to cut away these brackets here, simply because I am going to make this into a super powered B unit. All right, and months ago I had the opportunity to buy some of these super power weights. I think I bought a set of 4 and a set of 2, relatively cheap, $5 or something for all of them, for each set, and then they have to be milled out to accommodate the DCC chip and speakers and wiring and all that kind of stuff. So although I've pre-cut here and here on that one, that's just to show you what they look like in general. This one I've already milled out, okay, and as you can see, I've cut away the centerpiece, but in addition to that, I've made some keyways underneath here, all right, for the wiring, because that's very, very important, so the wiring doesn't get bound. I still have a little bit of filing to take away some of these rough edges, so that as the trucks turn and the wiring turns, it doesn't shave it away and short it out, because this is the opposite polarity than the wires that are running through there. So that's another little thing I've got to do yet. All right. That kind of gives you a good oversight of the process. All right. I'm not going to sit here and make you watch a 2-hour video of me soldering and stuff. We'll come back and I'll show you in stages where I am at. All right. So stay tuned. First thing I've done is I pulled the motor out. Okay, and these are the motor mounts. There's 2 different types of these mounts. There's black ones, which are a hard plastic, and then there's these white ones, which are semi-pliable. These mounts have a tendency over time to crack and break. These are in excellent shape still, so there's no issues with that. The other thing I like to check at this point is axle gears. Axle gears on these old Athearns and a lot of others will crack over time, allowing wheels to go out of gauge. It'll affect the pulling power of the locomotive, etc. And to check those, you simply see if they move. If they spin, the axle gear is bad. All right, these are still good. Okay. I've already checked the gauging using an NMRA gauge. Some of you may not be familiar with that, so I'll show you what that entails. Okay, this is an NMRA gauge, right? And there's a wheel gauge set, indentations here and here, and all you do is line it up and see if they are in gauge. All right, and this one, as I said, I've already done this, but checked it again. It's all good. So that's all good. Now, this is fallen over, so the spring came out. Do not lose these springs. When you take these brackets off, all right, the bottom one will have two little tabs that I have cut away already, and then I've flattened it there and there, and I will take a piece of electrical tape right along the bottom. If you can see that shiny streak in the middle, that's where it's been cleaned so it makes good contact. We don't want it to make contact. Right? We're changing it from DC to DCC, and so we've got to isolate this motor from the frame. Okay. Now this clip is actually bad. All right? And I do not have another, but since it's on the bottom of the motor mouse will hold it in place. And what this clip does, it not only allows you to solder the pickup, the motor feed, to the other end, all right, but it acts as electrical conduit or bus to this spring that I said do not lose. That's one of the reasons I made this portable thing, because it's got the lip and things don't roll off it. All right, the spring goes right in that hole and holds the brush in place. Make sure that there's a brush in there. All right, and there is. So next thing I'll do is I'll solder a lead, the motor lead from the decoder to here, and I'll do the same thing to the other side, and I will remount this motor after I get the isolation in there. I also have to pull these trucks off and fiddle with these pickup leads, okay? Because as the superpower weight sits in here, all right, you don't want it, and it slides, all right? You don't want this to come in contact with that. So I trim it away some, and to make sure the wire holds better, I put a little hole in these to feed the wire through before I solder it. Okay, so stay tuned, and I'll pull these trucks off. We'll trim these up, get those in good shape, and I'll show you what I'm talking about there. All right, for those that don't know Heath from Humanity Junction, go take a look at his channel whenever you get the opportunity. Anyway, I oftentimes take it for granted that people know what I'm actually talking about. And I had mentioned I got to take these powered trucks off. Some people may not know how to do that, so I'm going to show that real quick. All right, there's this saddle clip right here. All right, and all it does is pulls apart and allows this to come off. All right, probably screwdriver for it instead of these tweezers. There we go. So it just pries off, simple as can be. Set it to the side. Now, what you got to be careful here now is you got this worm gear, all right, and you got two little bearings, and you don't want to lose any of that stuff. All right? So pull that out and set it to the side as well. If you have a dish or tray or something you can put this kind of stuff into, you're better off. You're ahead of the ball game. Anyway, once that's done, this just lifts right off. Okay, and that's going to allow me to modify this clip piece here. As simple as can be. So I know a lot of people will actually solder directly onto this metal frame here. You can do that too if you wish. I just like to use this piece here. The other thing, as long as I have this off, is the gears underneath. Since this is new to me, I need to check. It looks to be well oiled. I'll put a little grease on it, but it's also where you would pull the axles out to change those axle gears I talked about, and I'll show you some of those. So Again, this just pries off. You probably should have gotten a flathead screwdriver for it. 1, 2, around. These are really actually easy to work on. I'm always afraid I'm going to break one of these clips. I never have, but I'm always afraid I will. There we go. Okay. Once you have this clip off, you can see how these axles are. I'm going to pull one of these axles to show you close up. Okay, now, there's actually 5 pieces to this. Each wheel is connected to its own axle. Alright? Thus, each wheel is isolated from one another. If you push these in towards each other and get them too close, those 2 axles will touch and create a short. So you don't want that. Alright, this black piece is the axle gear I talked about. And I'm looking at it real close just to make sure it's not cracked. And it doesn't appear to be. Alright, they're very easy to change. Just pull them apart, slide a new one on, and it's a very tight fit. You have to press it. And then gauge the wheels. But don't forget your 2 bearings. Okay? So that's just how you get these off and how you would replace them if need be. This slides right back in place. So, I need my grease, which is in the toolbox down here. And I also have some oil. And everybody has, their own favorites of everything. I like Labelle 102 for oil and Labelle 106 for grease. And it doesn't take much, folks. It's just, you put one little dab of grease right there and one little dab over here. As the wheels turn, all right, and the axles go around, they'll work themselves into place. Okay, and I'll put some on that worm gear up top as well. So let's get this thing back together. Simple as can be. And since we've had it apart, we're going to check that wheel gauge again. And yes, it's still good, as it should be. All right. Then you'd be surprised how little it takes for these axles to get out of gauge for it to cause derailments. You may have one car, all right, that derails in the same spot all the time and nothing else derails, and you automatically assume it's the track, when in fact it's the gauging on the wheels. Actually, it's both. Gauging on the wheels is the better fix, since all the other cars are fine. Okay, so I've taken my Dremel with a cutting disc, and I have cut off the tab and filed it down some, cleaned it up, put a hole through there for the wire. So this is now ready to go. We just have the other one to do, but we can put this one back in place before I lose some parts. There's a little knob under here that goes through that center hole. Sits right down on there, just like that. We have to put our worm gear and bearings back in place. Get it back in place like that. Then we just simply snap the cover back on. And what that does is not only holds the worm gear in place, but it also holds the truck onto the frame. Those two little tabs sit above where that pin is and allows it to swivel in all directions. Now if we do a test fit of the superpower weight, we can put it on there and we see that the metal tab does not come anywhere with the weight pushed as far back as it'll go. All right, the metal tab comes nowhere near the metal of the superpower weight. Okay, which means it'll be just as far away from the rear flywheel because this is the rear of the locomotive. So that one's done. I just have to repeat the process on the front before we move on to the guts of it, the actual installation of the soldering up of the decoder. So stay tuned. Alright, so the trucks are all modified. I filed down, took away some of the sharp edges on the superpower weight. Right, so we are now ready to start with the decoder. Now I've removed one of the plugs, the front plug. Okay, this is the plug that hooks up to the lighting and to the track pickups, to the motor, and of course we're not going to have any lighting on this B unit. But the reason I heard, I was watching Larry Puckett, the DCC guy, the other day, and one of his episodes, and he talked about a situation where a guy kept blowing up decoders when he was installing. He couldn't figure out why, and he contacted the decoder manufacturer, and the decoder manufacturer couldn't figure out why. So the decoder manufacturer actually hired a electronics engineer to go out to this guy's house. They gave him some pre-tested decoders to take with them, and lo and behold, he blew up a decoder, and he started checking, and apparently there's an internal ground to some of these soldering stations, and in particular it was a Weller station that Larry Puckett was talking about, and Larry had the exact same model, so he doesn't use it for any electronics anymore. But a simple fix for that, because there's no way I know how to check this thing to make sure the internal ground's good. So it's just simple, undo the plug, do whatever soldering I have to do, plug it in, away we go. So that's where we're at with that. All right. So the first thing we want to do is this broken clip. I want to get the lead to it soldered on and back onto the motor and get the motor reinstalled in this frame before I lose that spring and the brush that it holds. Okay, so I resined the points on here, and so now I'm going to tin it up, the wire and the bracket. Okay, and on these Digitrax decoders, the negative lead, motor lead, is the gray wire. Okay, tinned up. Okay, and I can use one of my helping hands here. Let's turn around so y'all can see. Just get a better angle here. we go. So now we gotta put the mounts back on, which will be easy. Easy peasy. And if you recall, I mentioned we have to isolate the bottom of this frame. So I've taken some Kapton tape and put a strip of it right there. Okay, so let's see what we got. I've got all the leads soldered up. You'll notice I drilled out a spot on the frame here so that I could solder in the left side pickup. I had the right side front and rear connected to the lead. I've got both track pickups to the decoder, and I now have the gray and orange leads to the positive and negative side of the motor. On the back side of the decoder, I have the little capacitor and the speaker. I've cut away most of the wiring I don't need. I've left a little bit on these harnesses for the ones that if I ever take this decoder out of this engine and put it in something that I require lighting on, I've left enough to be able to solder leads to. All right. So with that, we're going to take it back over to the test track and make sure it all works before we mount all this stuff up. All right. So stay tuned. Okay, so we're back on the test track. The rear track is the DCC test track. I've got it programmed in the default of 3, which is what most decoders come at. And as soon as I gave it track power, I have sound. All right, so let's make sure we got horn. And these decoders come with a default steam profile. I'll get into JMRI Decoder Pro and switch it all over, but we know we have a horn, or whistle in this case. And how about a bell? Got a bell, so we're good to go there. Now it's just a matter of motor control. And I'm going to hold on to this, notch it up, and there we go. We got motor control. So everything's working fine. Time to do our final mounting and go from there. Okay, so what I've done out of an old for sale sign, strip plastic. Great idea, by the way, courtesy, I learned it from cousin Vanny, BNSF 6951, another channel you should look up and watch. Vinny does some great scratch builds. But anyway, some strip styrene. I made this simple little piece, and the way it works is I've taken some Kapton tape and insulated off the metal that will be anywhere around the decoder. I got a couple more quick spots to do, but this insert piece simply slides in here, and using double-sided tape, the decoder will lay here and the speaker will lay back here. All right, so stay tuned and we'll get it mounted up. Okay, so here we are. All the wires. The hardest thing about these is routing the wires. You know, you get the wires routed fine, everything fits. The sheet of styrene there keeps any rubbing motion away from the speakers and the wiring. It just makes it a lot better. Plenty of Kapton tape to insulate things. Last thing we want is something shorting out. So that should be a pretty clean installation. The only thing I'm tad concerned about is where the negative lead connects to the frame. It's awful hard to solder to these frames. So, but for now, it works, and we'll take it, put the shell on it, and take it over to the bench and get it programmed. Maybe get some couplers on it too. All right. There we go. As I mentioned before, default is a steam profile. Okay, so everything works. Now it's a matter of programming. So let's switch over to Decoder Pro and we're programmed in. All right, so first thing we need to do is we need to add a new logo. And this is a Digitrax. And I think it's one of these. SPH166D. Active address right now is 3. Roster ID will be my initials. And I'm going to call it 6203. Okay. Since it's primarily going to be Tampa. Nope, let's back that up. It's going to be 3203. Since the other B unit is 3202. Alright. Active address is 3 for right now. And we can write that. Oh, no, we can't. It helps if we put it onto the programming track. Alright? So, let's take it off. And put it on the programming track. Alright, and now we can do it. Okay. So, there we go, 3203. We're going to save that. And we're going to, if we look up here, we should have A3. So let's take a look for it. There it is right there, top 1. So now we're going to open the comprehensive programmer. And road name is Santa Fe. Road number is going to be 3203. Whoop. Manufacturer is Athearn. Model F7B. Okay. We're saved to the roster. Okay. Now, what we can do is go back to the basics. We're going to change it from long to over to long and put an active address of 3203. Alright, and it's a long address forward. We're going to change it from 14-step speed format over to 28128. Now conversion's off, everything else looks good. We're going to write it. And you didn't like something. Let's change this again. Active address. Long. 3203. Because I hit read full sheet instead of right full sheet. Helps when you do the right things. Okay, so everything is okay. Before we go any further, we're going to save that. Alright, I want to double check the roster now. Look over here at 3203. There we go. It's right there. Alright, good enough. So, take a look at a few other things. Motor control, acceleration rate. I'm going to change that over to a, I think I had the other set at 2, so I'm going to change this one over to a 2. 120, everything else looks good there. Right changes. Basic speed control. We're going to speed table. We're going to mark that as use the speed table. And just to get it into the ballpark on speed matching, we're going to take her down here. And then we're going to force the swoop. That's not what we wanted. Take her down here, and we're going to match ends. Alright, so it's got a constant acceleration rate, and we're going to write the changes on the sheet. Now that'll get it in the ballpark for speed matching. Now, the next thing I'll do is get the AccuTrack out and fine tune that speed matching to the other locomotives. And since it's going to be the first one pulling, I'm going to have it set a little bit higher. Now you notice I've got an error on that one spot. Okay, and that's because it's actually between speed steps. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So we're going to move it just a tad. And then right changes. Okay, that fixed it. Took me a long time to figure that out. Sound levels, function map, we don't have to do anything on functions. I don't do chasis this way, so I'm not going to worry about that. We don't have any lighting. Next thing we want to look at is sound, and this is where we change it over from Steam to the default of GP38 diesel. Now I'll use the sound loader and load up an F7 sound profile for it. Okay, that's good there. Right changes to the sheet. And that'll take away the steam profile. The other thing when I look at here, I like to turn the volumes up. Especially, this is an 8-bit decoder instead of 16-bit, so I like to turn it up a little bit higher. Notch rate, I'm going to turn up a little bit. Prime mover, it's almost maxed out. We'll take a little bit more. The bell volume will drive you nuts, so I'm not going to do anything there. Everything else looks good. Let's write those changes on the sheet. Okay, so we're going to save all this. Alright, now we're going to move it over to the test track. Let's change our camera, back to the test track. There it goes. Now we have the diesel profile. Diesel horn. Diesel bell. Probably should have turned that bell down some. Everything else up and bell down. Cool. Alright. So, that's the decoder install, next thing I look at is the speed match. Alright, so stay tuned. Okay, so we got the Athearn set up, and I've mentioned this in previous tips of the days, but my layout speed limit is 70 miles per hour. So as I run the engine past or through the Athearn at full throttle, I want to speed match it down to 70 miles per hour, plus or minus 2. But in the case of this one, since it's going to be the one furthest back to the load, I want it to be slightly faster. So let's see where it's at now based upon my initial guess. That's 77. I got in pretty close. See what it's like going backwards. Okay, so it's pretty equal both ways. So I need to tone it down to just a tad. And mentions. And like bullshit. Let's save it. Close down. Let's try this again. Full speed. There we go, 71. And 72. So, with that, you got to see a quick, fairly easy decoder installation on a B unit. No lights, just sound and motor control. And I've been waiting to do this for a while. I was unable to get a reasonably priced, powered Athearn Blue Box F7 chassis. So, and A's and B units are both the same chassis, motors, etc. So, anyway, you got see the conversion to super power. Alright. You got to see the decoder, not only installation but program. You got to see speed matching. So I'll close it out. First of all, I want to thank you for joining me here at the Retirement Railroad. Matinee Modeling Tip of the Day. Again, I'm Steve, and I'm going to close it out running the Super Chief. I'll throw the dummy A unit on there. We'll have an ABBA consist, and I hope you enjoy it. Again, y'all have a great day. Bye now.